So to be as useful as I can be, it's important to have a balance between conceptualization, thinking, something that is philosophized, and direct human experience and obvious truth, things that are self-evident. For example, if someone has a gun to your head, the situation is self-evident. You're not going to think about it or imagine it or deal with it in an unrealistic way, unless you are afflicted by some mental illness that prevents you from seeing that which is self-evident. That's a negative example of something which is just self-evident. There are also positive examples of things which are self-evident. And there is then philosophy, which can, and even scientific analysis. Philosophy, science, it's really has the same function, which is to define the parameters within which our methods work. It's not just for entertainment's sake, because entertainment is more of a subjective thing. It's not really about pursuing some objective truth as a solution to problems. So there is a relationship, a self-evident relationship between power and freedom. What is that relationship between power and freedom? So first we need to distinguish if we would reduce all types of freedom into two basic types of freedom, and we would reduce all types of power into two basic types of power. What can we reduce these things to in the most fundamental first principles, self-evident way? Well, power, there is power which is corresponds to, it is derived from that which is misleading, coercion, threats. It is basically the way of using other people's power, getting other people to submit their power to you, and that accumulating power that way, or manipulating things within a corrupt system which already does that, and then using that power, which a lot of the things on this planet are like that. So a lot of the power that people wield on this planet at this time, it is derived, it's a mix, really. And the problem is people, they can't distinguish yin and yang, basically. They can't distinguish, they can distinguish it in some other intricate ways, but not on the most basic level, in the sense that they can't really distinguish between the soul and the ego. And a lot of people kind of tell themselves that they believe that there is no soul. So that's kind of a problem, and that's why you will never achieve true power if you can't make that distinction. But if you're watching this video, then it's because you would like to understand true power, and that so there is this distinction between, there is this relationship between power and freedom. Power, so there's two types of power, right? There's evil power and good power. Evil power, it is that which is the type of power that is not really fundamentally your own. You're using, persuasion, manipulation, or you're climbing the ladder within a corrupt system, and that's most of us are doing that to some degree, because that's the way the world's been set up. It feels like that's the only way to have more power, right? Because the relationship between power and freedom is, the more power you have, the more freedom you have, and that can be good power or evil power, but it's still going to give you more freedom, right? But what if you only develop good power, which is something that you are able to make the distinction between all that which depletes, misleads, confuses, coerces, is dishonest, is mind controlling other people to get them to submit their power to some cause that you've defined, that it's just it's a visualization, it's a type of mind control. Because in the end, if we reduce everything to just mind and energy, the question is, how do you mind the energy, or who's minding the energy? So if people are minding their own energy, then they're able to accumulate their own power. So if we can make this distinction between all that which depletes, misleads, confuses, coerces, is corrupt, threatens, all of these negative ways of developing power, and we go right down to the most fundamental level of our mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, psychological, causal, astral, on every level of existence, we make this distinction between all that which depletes, misleads, confuses, coerces, threatens, all that which ultimately leads towards destruction, and all that which genuinely builds, strengthens, and nurtures. When you develop your power according to this way, and you build, strengthen, and nurture it from the most fundamental level, you've distinguished between soul and ego, and you choose to prioritize your soul. Then, when you gradually accumulate power in this way, you're only you're prioritizing the positives. Of course, there are the negative things that we have to manage them, but how do we manage them is with the positives. How do we manage the ego? We manage it by prioritizing the soul. The soul and the ego, this is really a conjugate. This is a conjugate relationship between two things. It's not something you can just, you can't separate the north and south pole of a magnet. You can't separate the electric and magnetic from the electromagnetic field. There's a conjugate relationship here. How can we develop this in the best way possible is by prioritizing the goodness. So if we develop this kind of power, yes, you'll have the ability to use it for destructive purposes, but when you prioritize your soul over your ego, and you prioritize the yang over the yin, then you only want to use that for good. You will see how that has built strength and nurtures yourself, and has aligned all of your energy. The only way that can be so the only people who are going to be afraid of that power are people who are misusing, people who are afraid of being exposed for their evil actions. So the more power you have, the more freedom you have. But you must make the decision. What type of power are you going to cultivate? What type of power are you going to cultivate?